Greetings, colleagues. Welcome to the Ivory Attic. I'm Ian Isherwood.
And I'm Kurt Andreessen.
And we have a great show ahead of us. But beforehand, Kurt, I was thinking about you this month.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, because they announced Nobel Prize winners. And every time they do that, I always think of my friends in the sciences mostly. Yeah. And I was thinking of you because every year I'm rooting for you in physics.
Yeah.
And I say, this is your year.
Yeah. I know. And you are nice enough to always send that text to me saying, sorry, maybe next year. I mean, you didn't ask. It's funny, you didn't ask whether they had given me the initial, because they call you ahead of time to let you know to be ready for this. So like they're in the running. You didn't ask me whether or not I had received that. I noticed.
Well, because I know that I monitor it, and you would want me to be surprised because we're such good friends.
Yes, exactly.
And I'll wake up and just with anticipation.
It'd be a disappointment.
It would be a big disappointment. And it is every year a big disappointment that you don't. I was thinking about because as you know, I teach a class on C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, and they were good friends, and they both were professors. Yeah. And I thought, we're kind of friends sometimes, and also professors. And I thought maybe I could nominate you because.
I like that.
C.S. Lewis nominated J.R.R. Tolkien for the Nobel Prize for Literature. He didn't get it, but he nominated.
Well, I was going to say, I think one thing that I was just thinking about is that I actually can we put that in the pocket that between the two of us we have the same number of Nobel Prizes as C.S.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, that should go in the show description.
Right? Like, I think that's something.
Definitely. And so I was thinking I nominate you, but then I don't know exactly what you do. I know it has something to do with biophysics.
You send, I thought you meant like the process. I was like, you send a letter to Sweden.
Well, you do, but I don't know what to put in a letter. So you'd have to write it and give it to me, and then I'd have to just change the name.
Yeah,
and we could send it in if that's
great.
okay.
But we'll do that. We'll do that.
I was thinking of other things and that you could be known for because people in the sciences sometimes are known for laws, right? Like Boyle.
Oh yeah, okay,
he's got a law, right?
Yeah.
But aren't there principles too?
Yeah, there are principles, there are laws. You can also get like units named after you.
Oh wow! Okay.
So like volt. Right?
Okay.
Like that. So and the really exciting thing is that there's kind of different levels. So we're getting a little deep in here, but there's different levels of kind of hierarchy with how like special you get. If you really have nailed it, when they actually talk about your thing, they don't even capitalize it.
Oh wow! So
like Joule is lowercase j. They're like, listen. We don't even have this is just so it's it's kind of like Google.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Like
So what is a principle versus a law?
That's a principle. That's a longer discussion. There are lots of kind of the distinction between kind of laws and theories and things like that is a long conversation.
Okay. Well, I'm not capable of having.
Yeah, no, it's not worth having.
But the one thing I was thinking about was that we could name a principle after you right now.
Ooh.
Because one of the things that we've talked to all of our guests about is the state of higher education.
Okay, I like that.
And one of the things that, we're in an era of declining enrollments and we're in an era of budget cuts.
Yep.
And you came up with something. I've heard about this. I've no.
No personal experience.
Yeah, no. But so you came up with something at the beginning of the semester that I thought was great.
Okay.
And you said to a group of us, you said, I'm going to go to all the free lunches I can go to. And I thought that could be the Andreessen principle.
It definitely is the Andreessen principle, but just for
because
the record.
Because healthcare keeps getting more expensive, but we can get free lunches if they still exist.
Today, I got a free lunch.
Perfect.
From the president of the college.
This is the Andreessen principle in action.
And the funny thing is when people ask me, why am I going? I said, well, I might have some interesting things, but mostly I know for sure. The one thing you know for sure, you'll get the free lunch.
This is perfect. So we have something to name after you until the Nobel Prize.
It's perfect. Now, what prize exactly? Well, I thought that was going to lead to my prize. Is that like which prize will I get with that? Is that an economics one? I think, or
well, it probably is. If it's right. Econ has a lot of principles.
Yeah,
and things,
sure, exactly.
So,
and they talk about free lunch.
Oh yeah, they do, don't they? There's no such thing as, except you've proven that there is.
There is. I've been to a couple.
So we have a great show ahead of us. We have a wonderful guest. We've been meaning to get him on for as long as we've been doing this.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is one of the ones where, like, when we were first putting together our list, this was like, I think we had like 3 or 4 people were like, this is one person we need.
Yep. And we're so happy to have our colleague from Gettysburg College, McKinley Melton, here. McKinley has a PhD from the University of Massachusetts Amherst and a BA from Duke University. He is in the Gettysburg College English department and is the inaugural Kermit and Renee Paxton Endowed Teaching Chair, and has been in that position for a few years. McKinley has a long record of scholarship, a long record of service to Gettysburg College as well, and teaches some of the most well-received courses that I've ever heard students talk about at the college.
It's true.
Yeah. A master teacher, a master scholar, somebody we're exceptionally happy to have on the show. Welcome, McKinley.
Well, welcome after that introduction. It's good to be here. It's good to be here.
No pressure.
Thankful for the invitation and feeling tremendous pressure to live up to this to the hype.
Well, the good news is if it doesn't work, we'll just splice a bunch of things together to kind of make it how we thought of in our heads.
That sounds good. I was actually prepared to just send you a reel that I keep on my hard drive for when I need to sound good in public. So,
yeah, that sounds good.
So one of the first things we always ask our guests is, this is a strange profession. People get into it for a lot of different reasons. So why'd you get into the profession?
So I will say to start that this is maybe going to sound like a rehearsed story, but I promise that it's not. It's just a story that I've told a lot because it's the truth. And I find that it's often best to stick with the truth when asked to repeat, because keeping up with lies gets really, really complicated after
I was going to say, I actually make my stories better each time. I do the exact opposite.
Oh, I mean, embellishment is embellishment is a form of truth. But yeah, so when I was a wee tot, no. So I kind of came into all of this as a confessed and dyed-in-the-wool English major, which I knew I was going to do in high school.
Wow.
Sophomore year of high school, 10th grade, we were reading A Tale of Two Cities, and I loved it. And my classmates were looking at me like I was absolutely insane. And I'm like, do you not understand like the loom, and they're like weaving a list of names and the execution. I was head over heels. And so I knew that I was going to be an English major, but I had no idea what I was going to do like with it. Right. I thought about marketing. I thought about law school. I thought about journalism. And none of these things really kind of sung to my spirit. And so in sophomore year of college, I was invited to a recruitment dinner for a program called the Mellon Mays Undergraduate Fellowship. And this was a program, or is a program, that is designed to encourage students of color to enter into the professoriate as a part of a broader mission to diversify higher education by diversifying the professoriate. And so by this point now, I've added a double major to my English major. I was a double major in African-American studies, and English. And so I go to this dinner, and I'm still not entirely sure who invited me to this dinner. I have a suspicion for who put me on the list, but I'm still not entirely sure. So anyway, I go to this dinner, and I'm hearing all about this program, and I'm kind of saying, oh, okay, this is an interesting thing, this kind of academic life, whatever this really means. And the dean of the graduate school at Duke, where I did my undergrad, gets up and she gives her spiel, and she just kind of says, students of color are always coming to my office, and they're always saying, where are all the faculty of color? Where are all the faculty of color? So she stops, dramatic pause, looks around the room, and she says, they're right here in this room, and they're waiting to be made.
Wow.
And that was the moment where I said, well, sign me up. This is absolutely what I'm looking for. I mean, I had that experience as a Black student at Duke. And really even I was a very involved student. So I was in a number of student organizations. And at that time, I don't know if it still is the case, but at that time, you could not be an advisor for a student organization if you weren't tenured. It was just a rule for their faculty. That may have changed. I'm not entirely sure. But even trying to find advisors amongst the very few tenured Black faculty for our organizations was always a struggle. And so I had that experience for various different reasons. And so as soon as she said that, that basically was like, yeah, okay, sign me up. And I applied for the Mellon program, got into it. And, the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow, that's That's a really interesting story. That's much better than mine. Mine was I didn't want to get a job, so which is less inspiring, I think.
Well, we'll work on that. Maybe that could go through a couple of rounds of embellishment.
Maybe we can do a little bit of work
before you repeat that to anyone else. But yeah.
Well, luckily, no one will hear this, so it'll be fine.
So you went up to UMass Amherst.
I did. I applied to a range of programs. I looked at English and at Black Studies programs. And at the time, I want to say at the time there were only I think there were 6 programs in Black Studies, 6 PhD programs, because I think Northwestern started the 7th program, and that was maybe 2 years after I started at UMass. And so I applied to a range of English and Black Studies, and I got in and went to UMass. And it was definitely a new experience. I'm a Southerner, grew up right outside of Atlanta, went, of course, to undergrad in North Carolina. And so Amherst was further north than I had ever lived before. I was technically born in New Jersey, but I don't tell that to a lot of people, although I guess all of your listeners are now going to know. Technically, I'm
We'll bleep
in New
it out.
Jersey.
We can bleep it out. We can just get rid of the Jersey part. Then they can guess what the new is.
Yeah, I like that. Just, censorship used for good.
Although I just said it now, so now I'm going to have to bleep it again. So it's really getting...
But yeah, so I went up to Amherst, to this place I had never been, and went to the Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies there. Loved it. It was an amazing experience, and definitely I had moments where in the initial kind of trip up there, we had driven, my mother, my aunt, and I drove up to Amherst the summer before, and we were so tired from the drive that we couldn't find our exit. So at the time, they've reordered the numbers. This is a thrilling story. Just brace yourself. They've since reordered the numbers, but it used to be off 91. It was exit 9, which was the exit that would lead you to the University of Massachusetts. This is important to the story.
Okay.
So we're looking for exit 9. Cannot find exit 9. We have passed. We've gotten up to exit 11. We get off. We go back on 91 South. We circle around, get off again. There's no exit 9. There's no exit 9. And we finally kind of pull off on the road, and we run into a police officer. And you ask the police officer for directions when you feel safe enough to do so. And this was a time in which we actually did, because we were just completely befuddled by the fact we could not find the exit. Just as we're pulling up to the police officer, I realize, as we're getting ready to ask him, we're still in Connecticut. And we're looking for the exit. And I tell this story because it was just so far that we were looking for the University of Massachusetts a state early, because it just was like, I cannot believe I'm choosing to go this far away. We must surely be there by now.
I mean, listen, I've driven from Pennsylvania up to Boston, and as soon as I get to Connecticut, I feel that way. So I think that's valid. So
yeah. And so once I conquered the distance, Amherst was actually quite nice.
And it's the pre-smartphone era too, so you can't track yourself or anything like that.
That was one of the more diplomatic ways I've been called old this week. So thanks for that. But yes, it was pre-smartphone.
You're what we call one of those pre-smartphone era professors. Yeah.
It was like a Zach Morris situation. We still printed off of MapQuest, and
and if you didn't date yourself before that, the Zach Morris reference absolutely has nailed down.
Definitely just took me over the edge. Yeah.
So your dissertation, what was it on?
So my work was on spirituality.
Okay.
The development of what I called a Black spiritual aesthetic throughout 20th century African American lit. So that, I don't know if, again, your viewers and you all, I'm sure, will be fascinated by the whole evolution of this. But it really kind of started very early on, within maybe my first year. I just kept noticing within the slave narratives how much of the kind of impulse to literacy was often grounded in this desire to read the Bible for themselves. And so when I was kind of trying to really grapple with this question of why is it that these enslaved people are gravitating toward a religion that's being taught to them by people who are holding the Bible in one hand and the whip in the other. And I kept trying to figure out what is going on. What is it about Christianity that makes this appeal, that does this work? And I met with one of my advisors, who would soon become my advisor, and she promptly informed me that I was asking a great question, but it was the absolute wrong question. And she said, that's really nice that you're noticing that, but you're asking the question, what is it about Christianity? And what you need to be asking is, what is it about the Africans? Right? What is it about African descended people that made them see what they saw in Christianity that made them work for them? And so I pivoted my work to, instead of asking questions about religion, I started asking questions about spirituality.
Interesting.
And yeah. So
did that work? I mean, so, you have this kind of dual degree, kind of the English side thing. Like, did that work involve looking through a lot of literature and things like that, or was this kind of a departure from that type of stuff?
No, it was a thoroughly interdisciplinary program, and it was an interdisciplinary project. So my kind of, when I pull up my bibliography from all those years ago, it was a range of literary texts, literary theory, critical theory. There was a lot of philosophy. There was a lot of religion, ethics studies. It was a range of texts, but it was really a project that, though it was a literary project, you could have made an argument that it could have been a religious or ethics kind of a course, a moral philosophy kind of a project as well.
Oh, it's really neat.
Yeah.
It's really neat.
And so that naturally would then lead to your work with James Baldwin, right?
Exactly. Which originally I didn't want to work on Baldwin.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't want to work on Baldwin because I thought everybody works on Baldwin.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was just kind of like, I didn't anticipate that there was going to be a need for me to do it, because I felt like, well, everybody's already doing Baldwin. Let me go and do these other things. But I couldn't write a dissertation on Black religion and spirituality without talking about Baldwin.
Exactly.
And I think I did an all right job with it. So,
apparently your committee did too. So
yeah, they signed. It was under duress, but they did sign. No, they did. It was, and it still led me to. I probably work on Baldwin and teach on Baldwin more than probably any other writer. Because then once I moved beyond the religion stuff, I started to also think about all of the. There's just almost no topic that I can think of that Baldwin doesn't have some insight in.
Oh, cool.
So it worked beyond the church.
Perfect. And then you've now shifted. You have a new project, right? Is that right?
I do. My current work is in poetics. So I'm looking at contemporary Black poets, with an emphasis on those poets who are both skilled performers and have published work to great acclaim. So I'm really kind of interested in troubling that dynamic, or that division that we often establish between the page and the stage.
Cool.
And by thinking about poets who do both, and do both really, really well.
Oh, that's really interesting. Oh, cool.
Who are some of the writers you're working on?
So probably, I don't want to get into trouble by listing favorites, but I'll say among the favorites.
We'll just put out there that if you don't list a person, you absolutely think that they're terrible.
You. Yeah, I think it's important that gets noted for the record, for posterity. But Dinesh Smith is probably always kind of the first one I name on that list. I love their work. Dominique Christina is an amazing poet. Mahogany Brown, an amazing poet. I'm looking at some work by Stacey Ann Chin, Dorothea Smart, Amanda Johnston. I'll stop there because I'm going to start getting into trouble by running out. But Patricia Smith is also an amazing poet. Just finished teaching her work last week. But yeah.
And what kind of method are you using to kind of investigate this, to look at these things?
So I am. Wow, this is really. I'm just imagining this.
What's
how
your methodology?
This is going to
be.
Well,
no, I as a physicist, you tell me, you're like, and I really like. I would love to say that something pops in mind that's really stupid because it's funnier, but to be honest, nothing comes to my mind. So, I really like. I'm like, how do you? I assume at some point you read something.
I do. I do read.
You probably read the poems.
And
I was going to say, there's some of that.
Yeah, often I read and then I read it again.
Oh, okay.
But
wait a second. Okay, now
that's where the real trick is. That's where the real trick is. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, so I would say my method is really more of a again, kind of grounded in that sense of interdisciplinarity, right? Like the project itself is really kind of taking its leave from E. Patrick Johnson, who is actually a scholar of queer theory and performance theory, who's out of Northwestern. And he writes often about this idea of vernacular performance and vernacular forms of resistance. And so I take part of his framework in terms of really thinking about embodied resistance and vernacular practice. And I think about that in combination with the kind of history of the oral tradition, which goes back to West Africa and works itself throughout the diaspora, in combination with kind of studies in Black poetics. So the project is really kind of I often think of it as the intersection of orality, performance, and literature.
That's cool. See, I will say, I think you sell your stuff short because that actually sounds really cool to me. And then I get really embarrassed. I'm like, I actually don't want to describe my research
I just
anymore.
didn't know if you wanted me to actually start quoting the theoretical underpinnings.
No, that would be lost on me. That would definitely be lost on me.
We should ask guests, though, to give impromptu literature reviews.
I like that. I really like
just
that.
edit them out, but have them go through the entire process of it.
That sounds like a surefire way to go national.
Exactly. This thing's going to blow open.
Is syndication still a thing? I don't even know if that's
absolutely
in the age of the internet. Do people actually get syndicated, or is it just you get a URL? I don't know how this works.
Yeah, that's you described it perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah. What we get, I don't know, like the internet's weird, right? Like if we had them do that and
we should put that on t-shirts. Like, what's your methodology? The internet's weird.
Well, but I mean, like, what if they just whispered it and it was like an ASMR thing? Like, I don't know, like. Is there academic ASMR out there? Like maybe this could be
yourself up to a whole new audience.
This is it. This will be the moment.
Yeah.
When they're handing me the Nobel. Right. I'll be like, well, this is when the idea came. This is like
there might be one for podcasting someday too. I mean, we don't know. So did you always think that you wanted to be a teacher, that you wanted to teach maybe at a liberal arts college, or?
Oh, well, interestingly enough, I've been told, I don't recall this, but I've been told by my mother and my older brother, and they're generally trustworthy, that I used to line up my teddy bears and teach to them. I don't remember this, but they both swear that this is a thing that happened. So I think there's probably some truth to it. I mean, I imagine they didn't coordinate to create this childhood memory. I always remember wanting to write. My earliest memory of any kind of sort of profession was when I had very meticulously traced the Cat in the Hat onto paper. I put tracing paper down and I traced all the letters, and I took it to my father and was very, very proud of what I had written. And I got at about maybe 3 years old my first lesson in plagiarism. He actually did tell me that that's not writing, that's plagiarism. And I was like, what's plagiarism? Because I was precocious and I don't like hearing words that I don't know what they mean. And that's when I learned that you can't just copy other people's work. So being a writer was always what I had in mind. The teaching thing kind of came after the teaching thing kind of came as a part of my understanding of what it meant to be a faculty member. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the liberal arts colleges, I fell in love with the liberal arts when I was in Amherst because I taught at Hampshire College.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so I taught and I actually got hired at Hampshire through a program called the James Baldwin Scholars. So we're doing it all full circle.
Oh, yeah.
And I came into Hampshire initially, kind of came in to hold the spot for a colleague who took the semester off to finish his dissertation. Okay. And then they hired me, and then I ended up staying there for 5 years.
Wow.
And just really, I feel like I had a really, really good undergraduate experience. I enjoyed my time in undergrad, but I had nothing like the kind of experience that my students were having.
Yeah.
And the kind of relationships that they had. And not just like with me, but like literally the kinds of dynamic interpersonal connections they were able to build on that campus of about 1,200 students was nothing like what I had experienced. And so I really just kind of was like, yeah, I like this liberal arts. I don't know if I would have applied to one coming out of high school because I just hadn't heard of them. The first I ever heard of liberal arts colleges was one of my friends who also graduated with me went to Agnes Scott. And I was like, oh, what's Agnes Scott? And that was like, I had heard of big research schools, state schools, and HBCUs, which are actually liberal arts colleges, but we don't talk about them as liberal arts colleges. But that's a conversation for another day, or perhaps today, wherever the dialogue is going. But yeah, so I didn't know about them, hadn't really experienced them until I taught at Hampshire. And being there for 5 years is what led me to really say, yeah, I want to do liberal arts colleges. There's just something about the kind of the structure of the place, the size, the premium on undergraduate teaching, but also the idea that the courses you teach are intentionally supposed to be part of kind of a network of intellectual growth that your students are gaining by the way that they're bridging the gaps between a physics class and an English class and Africana studies and drama and history, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't want to leave you out there.
Thank you.
But yeah, no problem.
Thank you. He tends to do it all the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah. I noticed that earlier. You were really going on about the possibility of Nobels, and at no point did he mention a MacArthur.
There wasn't anything.
There was nothing.
It's all one. It's all one way.
It's all one way.
Just absorb.
So, do you find that? I mean, one of the things that we both hear about you on campus is that you're a phenomenal teacher. I have students who are always saying to other students to take one of your classes, right? And I think that that's always wonderful for faculty members to hear. Kurt gets a little bit jealous. The rest of us are very gracious.
For the record, I get very jealous. Right. It's not a little bit jealous.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah, exactly. It's very jealous.
So something's clearly working and has been working with you in the classroom, right? Mm-hmm. And so what do you think that is? Like, how do you approach your craft as a teacher? Has it changed over time?
Oh my God. So I'll be really honest. I appreciate the question. I also hate this question. And it's not your fault that I hate it. I hate this question the same way that I hate like writing teaching statements. I'm like, I really wish that
Well, those are useless. We can all agree. Useless, right?
Yeah, this is really useful.
Yeah.
I'm like, just like, let me do a teaching demonstration. Don't make me talk about what I do. I don't really know, to be really perfectly honest with you. I mean, I think that I'm engaging. I think that I am excited about what I do, and I try to inspire students to feel that same level of excitement. I think one of the things that I work really hard at is trying to break down really complicated things in ways that feel accessible and understandable, but not dumbed down. One of the things that I think I am pretty good at, if I'm going to toot my own horn, is I think I'm really intentional about creating a sense of community in the classroom, and I think that for me is a really critically important thing because I teach what I teach. I would like to believe that community in the classroom is important for everyone, but the way that I frame it often is, we're going to spend time talking about race, sexuality, class. We're also going to spend time talking about trauma and violence and racism and oppression and power and privilege and all of these things, which are topics that can really lead us to feel shut down if for no other reason than we're scared of saying the wrong thing. We're scared of being impolite. And so the only way those conversations can work is if we have an atmosphere of mutual trust and mutual respect. And so one of the things I work really hard to do is to cultivate that. I don't fully know how I do it, but I'm able to do it. And I often find that just the students will respond in ways that I feed off of that energy, we build off of, and we're able to kind of go where we need to go in ways where, as I often will say, I am perfectly happy to have you feel uncomfortable. You should feel uncomfortable, but I want to make sure you never feel unsafe.
Right.
And so how do we kind of curate a space that does that? Involves a bit of humor, some sarcasm. I relentlessly pick on people, but I generally have learned over the years to pick a whipping boy or two, so that it all goes to a person who I know can take it. Because you got to be careful with that. Just willy-nilly throwing sarcasm out there, it doesn't always land. So I think a level of humor, I think a level of kind of commitment to what it is I'm talking about.
Sorry.
Love it.
I also, quite frankly, really know what I'm doing. Like I know what I'm talking about. And so I think that level of kind of preparation and investment in getting it right, I think students recognize it and they respond to it. And before they feel comfortable talking themselves, they often appreciate like the amount of knowledge that I bring into a classroom. All of this sounds so egotistical.
No, it's I think you're just, you were describing what you do, which I think is not.
Well, what you do, and I think what honestly makes the liberal arts classroom a really special place, right, is that sense of community and actually getting to understand your students, but also understanding that you can push them in ways that are not going to make them feel unsafe, right, but that are going to make them feel uncomfortable and uncomfortable in a way in which they're going to intellectually grow, right? And you can do that kind of work at a place like this. It's more difficult to do it in other places, but especially if you do have those personal skills to be able to meet them where they're at. I mean, I don't think there's anything egotistical about it. I think there's something super authentic about it. And I think authenticity is something that students, as we know, respond to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
I would agree with that. Thank you. No, I do. I really would. I would agree. I think that there is. If I weren't embracing, and if I came in with a performance, I think they'd see through it, and it would be really, really difficult for me to make my way in. I just kind of show up. I do what I do.
Do you? I mean, I am curious because again, just from someone who sees these classes from the outside, I mean, you really do you teach some of the what I would think of as the most challenging classes, I think, at the college. In that, for instance, the intro to African American Studies is like something that, like, to be blunt, at Gettysburg College, we often are requiring people to be in there, and is filled with possibly a combination of some very interested and some very authentic students, but also some students who were really resenting the fact that they are in that class. I mean, do you enjoy that? Is that a child? I think it could go both ways, right? I feel like.
Yeah, enjoyment is a strong word. I often describe those students as being conscripted into my classes.
That's something I teach.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's a part of me that I don't love it. It's not my favorite. Honestly, I often really love when I feel like there's a bit more self-selection that brings them in. But what I appreciate about the intro course in particular is that even though students are not always they're not always eager when they run in, I do kind of embrace that challenge to say, and this happens on the first day of class. We do our introductions, and I ask, and I almost stopped doing it in that class in particular. Like, why did you sign up for this class? Because inevitably 25 of the 30 students will say, I'm here for a requirement. And I'm like, by the time it gets to 15, it gets really old. I'm like, we understand you're here for a requirement. Of all the requirements.
There are other places you could be and satisfy the requirement.
So let's consider you chose this one instead of another one. Why?
Just say me. You can just say me.
You can just say I've heard amazing things about you from Professors Andreessen and Isherwood, and I really wanted to come. So there's a part of me that does take that as a bit of a challenge, and really recognizing that I love this stuff. Right? Like, I think this stuff is fundamentally important to our ability to understand the world in which we live, and that there are these connections between Africana studies to any of your quote unquote real classes, your major courses. And so part of what I try to do is I think about that as, how do I not like woo you, but how do I like help you to realize by the time we're at least halfway through the semester why this is still relevant, right? Yeah. And maybe you didn't run through the door to sign up, but I want you to feel that, you are gaining something that's worthwhile for you. And so sometimes it means I have to talk about the economics of the slave trade to get my econ students thinking about it. And sometimes it means I have to actually, get students really thinking about how this connects to current events or how it, helps them think differently about a class that they took last semester. So it's about trying to kind of find those points of connection, because I think that one of the things that is most difficult about teaching a course that is drawing students because it fulfills a requirement is that students feel like I'm only here to check a box that I have to check. And it reeks of busy work for them.
Right.
And to try to help them see this is not busy work. It is something you might not have chosen to do, but I'm going to make it worth your while by the time you're done here. And then, of course, I'm giving them amazing things to read, and they realize they're learning things that they're like, I've never heard this before. And then they're mad that they're just learning it for the first time. And then we go through a range of emotions. It's good. It's good times.
Yeah.
It's good times.
I love it.
No, I love those moments. One of the things in one of the classes I teach on American War memory, when some students finally, when they're first introduced to a concept like the lost cause of the Confederacy, and in particular for some students from the South, they're like, wait a second, that's not the story of the Civil War. And I'm like, no, that's not the story of the Civil War. And then they get angry. They're like, why didn't I know there was another story?
Yeah. That's the moment where I really love my primary source documents.
Right.
Yeah, right. And I'm like, and I say this often, I don't want anybody leaving here saying Professor Melton said, no, he didn't. He gave you what the Confederates said. He gave you Thomas Jefferson's notes on Virginia. That's what he thought of black people. So, you don't say I said it. I'll say my own things, but no, I gave you what they said. Argue with them.
Right. It's really tough because they're dead.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I think we just one more question in the interview.
What is that question, Kurt?
What's bringing you joy right now?
What's bringing me joy right now? Oh gosh. I should have been prepared for this.
No one ever is. Actually, there was one guest that was prepared for it, and we didn't ask them the question.
I heard about that. I did hear about that.
So we're always keeping people on their toes.
Yeah. What is bringing me joy right now? My students. I know that sounds hokey, but it really is. I had a great class on Tuesday afternoon. I'm teaching a senior seminar, Poetic Justice, Contemporary African American Poetry. And so we're looking at poetry that is all pivoting around questions of social justice. So this is, and perhaps we'll get into this in another part of the interview, but I don't know if you all have heard, but there's a decline in enrollments in the humanities. I don't know. I know. It's
you've never heard of this,
We should talk about this.
We should
talk about this on the podcast.
Yeah, it's something you should probably bring up. Your listeners want to know. And so we are in a situation where we have fewer English majors than we once did, once upon a time, and so we're in a position now where we're only offering 2 capstone seminars. Okay. One is a creative writing seminar. One is a literature seminar. We used to have 2 or 3 literature seminars. And so your students get their pick. This year, they didn't get a pick. They're with me. They're either writing concentrators.
The Professor Melton show all the time.
That's what it is. And we try really hard to give our seniors the chance to be like, at least give them 2 options. But we don't have the numbers to sustain curricular efficiency being what it is. And so we are only offering the 1 literature seminar. So again, beginning of the semester, like, what brings you all here? Clearly, you're all English majors and you need to graduate. That's what brings you here. But I asked them, I got 14 students, and I asked them, like, how many of you all were like excited about this class? And how many of you all were like, I don't really like poetry, but this is the seminar and I have to take a seminar, so I'll do it. 9 of the 14 hands said, I don't really like poetry, but this is what it is.
Where I am.
And here we are. And I brought this up to them on Tuesday because I was sitting there watching them around the table. And I was like, I just want to remind you all that 9 weeks ago, you all were loath to discuss poetry. And you all are talking about poetry. Like, you all are on fire with the way that you're talking about poetry. We're reading Jericho Brown's The Tradition, which won the Pulitzer in 2020. And they were just like diving in and they were pulling out. I was just like, I was really, really kind of geeked out. So that brought me joy this week.
That's
so yeah, that's my answer. Final answer. I'm going to stick with it.
Okay, good. Yeah. No, that was wrong. It's Halloween candy. No, sorry. Okay.
Also a good one. Yeah. I mean, I find joy on multiple fronts. So Reese's in particular.
I was gonna say I've been eating a ton of Take 5, so that's
Oh, it's such a good one. It's the best of all of them.
Yeah, Take 5 is pretty good.
So good. Yeah. I actually introduced somebody to that candy bar for the first time.
Oh.
Like someone our age, and they had never had it, and I was like,
did you uncomfortably stare at their face while they were eating it?
No, I did. I said no. I stared. Like I was like, this is like, once you open this, you're not going back.
Your life's changed.
Yeah. And this isn't just because we want a sponsorship, although we will take one.
We will definitely take that sponsorship.
If it just means nothing but Take 5s being just dumped in my lawn,
in my hot attic.
This is the Take 5. If we had to like do a sponsorship, this is the Take 5 Ivory Attic.
Take 5 radio hour. It could be like a 1950s, like the Lucky Strike radio hour, right?
Well, yes, it's good. It's good. Yeah. The cigarettes and peanut butter and chocolate.
We are not condoning smoking.
Nor eating enormous amounts of candy. Just for I think they both have their own. It's just.
So, do you want to take a break?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
All right, well, let's take a break, and we'll be back with more of the Ivory Attic. Welcome back to the Ivory Attic. We're on to our next segment, which is, what's it called, Kurt? I can't.
Actually, I don't remember. Wait, I think you've got it. It's
Did You Know?
Wonderful. So Did You Know, of course, is our really popular quiz portion of the actual show, where we bring in a difficult question that without no knowledge coming in here, and you have to answer it. It's going to be stressful.
Okay,
I'll just warn you ahead of time, because if you get this wrong, you'll be embarrassed and
gotcha.
And we've had a lot of wrong answers.
A lot of wrong answers, and the key thing also is that there are no prizes.
Yeah, there's absolutely no prizes.
There's no prizes.
It's just my dignity.
Yeah, that's just exactly your dignity.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, it's actually, that stays the same. It's if you lose it, it only goes down.
Gotcha.
So,
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it can't go up.
Exactly. There's no boosting here.
You're on our podcast after all, right? So you teach a first-year seminar called Black Superheroes in American Popular Culture, Nat Turner to Netflix.
I do.
So what's
Which
that
was
called?
much cooler back when Netflix was the only game in town. And then they moved all their properties. Marvel moved all its properties off of Netflix, so now it's just,
Yeah, so what can you do one for D? I don't know, because they're all on Disney now, right? So,
I guess so.
I don't know who. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the course.
It is a course that I actually got the idea for while watching Luke Cage, when Luke Cage first came out on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I was with my friend and colleague Betsy Duquette, and she said, "McKinley, you could teach a class on this." And I said, "I could teach a class on this." And so it just kind of developed from there. And basically the course kind of operates in 3 different segments. We start with historical figures during slavery, starting with Frederick Douglass, graphic novel Harriet Tubman. And then we move to the Civil Rights Movement, where we look at John Lewis's March graphic novel series. And then we think about the figures of MLK and Malcolm X and the ways that they have kind of resonated historically with Magneto and Charles Xavier. And then that kind of leads us to shift into the fictional superhero section, which is where we close out, where we look at the Black Panther, of course, as well as Miles Morales, Spider-Man, figures like Storm. And we look at actually a scholarly monograph called... I think it's just called Super Black. Yeah, Black Superheroes in American Popular Culture. And so it's a really cool class, I think. And I think my students often agree.
That's what I've heard.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
And it's a cool class because students sign up thinking it's like Black Panther all the time, despite the fact that the course description actually actively says historical figures and fictional superheroes. Like, I'm very clear about what we're going to do.
Well, they probably just think you mean old comics.
That's probably what they think. That is not what I mean. And so we ultimately really kind of interrogate that question of the hero. And we think about depictions of Black heroism within various social justice movements, but also what does it mean to always cast Blackness in the role of villain? As opposed to what happens when Blackness is allowed to inhabit heroism. And so we read graphic novels, we read a YA novel on Miles Morales, we read a scholarly monograph, and we read actual comic books as well. And so part of what the goal of the class is to do is to not only think conceptually about Black heroism, but also to develop multiple modes of literacy, to get students to really think about how you read different texts differently. We also, of course, watch films, and it is a course that fulfills our writing requirement. So they write film reviews, they write analytical essays, they write kind of blog posts. So it's a range of writing styles, a range of literacies, but it's all pivoting around the question of Black heroes throughout history.
It sounds like an awesome course.
It does.
It's a fun class.
Unfortunately, you think that you've just answered the quiz. That actually was just the prelude.
I was about to say, that feels like a really easy quiz. You're asking me about what I do.
No, that's the prelude.
It's actually a two-parter, so it's actually going to be... So let's start with the first part. The first part is...
Since you like superheroes, apparently.
Sure.
Which superhero are you?
Which superhero am I?
Yeah, which would you be?
Gosh. Yeah, I think, the superhero I would say I identified most with growing up would be Storm.
Oh,
I was a big fan of Storm. I love the idea of controlling the weather. I love the idea of awesome displays of humbling power.
Storm was cool. Did you watch the X-Men cartoon when you were a kid?
I did watch the X-Men cartoon.
She was really cool in that.
She was really, really cool.
Although she always fell. She always fell at the end.
I prefer to think of it as a tumble, as a spin, a spinning descent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that actually was the easy one as well. Yeah. Here's the hard one.
The hard one is, which superheroes are we?
Oh, goodness. Well, now let's...
You passed the first part.
You did pass the first part.
Okay.
Yeah, good
job.
All
right.
Half credit so far.
Let's see, which
50%
ones. So, Kurt, I'm kind of getting some... maybe some Charles X vibes from you, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I think that there's wisdom in you.
Yeah,
Dr. Andrews.
I know. I think, and I like to be into control, which is it.
there is a level of that as well. Better hair. But
I assume you mean me. So that
yes, that is where I was going. Ian, I'm gonna. I hope this is not like terrible and I'm shifting you into an ensemble role, but I'm gonna throw you in with like Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four.
Wow.
I think that there's I think you're nimble, Ian.
Oh yeah.
And the kind of ability to kind of move and maneuver and go into different spaces. There's a flexibility with you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to take that.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot.
No, it's not a shifty. It's not a shifty nimbleness.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And I'm not like Gumby, I'm a superhero.
Yeah, no, it's not Gumby. It's not Gumby. No. You're nimble. You're not malleable to other people's administrations, right? This is about how you move. So yeah. Gumby's just,
that's good.
Wilting.
Well, how did he do?
You still passed the quiz.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I was really nervous.
You passed your answer.
Okay.
You passed my answer. But, unfortunately, not Kurt's. The only acceptable answer for Kurt is Thor.
Thor. Yes, Odinson. Yes.
Which was determined by Ian, just for the record. I just want to make it very clear. Yeah.
Well, I once said to Kurt, if you got to pick like your own name, what would you pick as your own name? Mm-hmm. If you were your parents and
yeah.
And what did you say?
Thor Thorensen.
Thor Thorensen.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so since then, I keep thinking of him as Thor Thorensen.
I think it would have been a different career path for me as Thor Thorensen. I
think so. I think it would have opened up some other doors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but
it's still good.
Still with a commitment to physics.
Yeah, that's right. Excellent. All right, where are we going next, Ian?
Well, our next segment is What's Your Style?
Oh, so this is a segment where we just ask you. It's quite carefree, in that we just ask you to comment on what do you think about when you're creating your style, creating what you're trying to do. Do you have any? How would you describe your style? And it's.
Yeah, I don't think of myself as particularly stylish.
Funny, 'cause I am actually one of the top ones on campus.
Well, okay, that's very kind. That's very kind. I try to go for comfort. That's literally my major goal. I go for comfort, and I go for what I deem to be professional.
Yeah.
I try to keep it clean.
Yeah.
Right. Keep it neat. I try to coordinate the colors as best I can, but I'm a very primary color kind of a guy.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
And don't really do a lot of patterns, right?
Yeah.
I kind of am a solid colors. Give me slacks and a button down, and I'm kind of good to go. Comfortable shoes. Yeah, shoes are all about comfort. They're not at all about style.
The thing that's funny though is that you say that, but when you say that about actually you generally try to match colors up, I think that really puts you in a really elite group of.
Oh yeah,
elite group of people, especially among college professors. I feel like that's really that.
That is that you do. You're landing on a very good point. Yeah.
You're also. But those are nice shoes.
They are. They're snazzy. I'm not gonna lie. I think they work well, but they're slip-ons.
Okay.
I can't be bothered with laces half the time. They're really kind of like they're really. I think these might be my Cole Haans, and part of the reason I love Cole Haan is just because I walk a lot. One of my students once referred to me, this was, again, aging me because this was years ago when the movie had just come out, but he referred to me as Happy Feet because I never sit still in a class. I'm always walking and pacing, and I'm always moving. And so I need stuff that's going to not make me feel like my dogs are barking by the end of the day.
And Cole Haans are comfortable dress shoes too.
Really comfortable dress shoes.
And if they want to sponsor us, that would be great.
I was going to say, it's Reese's at the same time. Do you I am curious. One thing I'm curious. Did you was there? Because one of the things that we talked about with a previous guest was kind of the evolution of the kind of how you dress, right? So what was that like going from? Was it basically just this kind of pre-Professor McKinley and then post-Professor McKinley, or is there is there? Because for me I think there was again I've talked about this before. I think there was a kind of grad school was a lot of tie-dye for me.
Rusted Root.
A lot of Rusted Root inspired things. And then when I got my first professor job, there was definitely a transition period of lots of polo. Nothing but polo all the time, and then I've moved on from that. But
yeah, I think so. I again, I don't think I've ever been particularly stylish, but when I was an undergrad, it was mostly like what I wear now when I'm not teaching. It was jeans and t-shirts, sneakers. I did wear a lot of fleece pullovers, and
Ooh.
I don't know why. I found them comfortable and cozy, and my fraternity brothers used to mock me relentlessly because I had about like 5 different fleeces, and I would just pick a different one. And still t-shirt, jeans, and a fleece. That was my undergrad style, and grad school stayed the same. I will say the one thing that really did change is that once I started teaching, I started wearing glasses. So I've been wearing contact lenses since I was about 8th grade. And I started teaching. I started wearing glasses, and a few years ago, I was hanging out with one of my friends from college, and she said, Mac, because I was cool in college, I went by Mac. She said, Mac, I noticed you wear your glasses a lot now. Like, you never wore glasses. Did you wear glasses in college? I was like, yeah, I wore contact lenses. I said, but when I started teaching, I was only 22. I was like, I wore glasses because it made me look older, and I felt like it gave me a bit more gravitas. And so she looks at me and she's like, oh, so you're going to go back to contact lenses now? And so I was like, wow. One of the other diplomatic ways I've been called old. Basically don't need it anymore. But yeah, so no, that is the main thing I would say. I moved into more of an eyeglass guy. I like that. And the beard didn't come in until I was about 28.
Okay.
So that also is a new,
getting some more. Yeah. You're getting more and more prestigious every day.
That's what I'm trying to do. I keep hoping that I'm going to be able to rock a good salt and pepper. Right now, it's just like 3 gray strands, but I want it to grow in really full enough that it actually becomes a distinguishing feature.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
But but other than that, no, I probably have been wearing the same, combinations of slacks and just button downs that I don't tuck in. I would love to wear more vests and jackets. I find layers cumbersome. Yeah. And I find it hard. Like, if you see me in a jacket and a tie, I am literally, it is for a reason. And then as soon as the reason is done, it's off. It's but yeah, I go for comfort.
Well, and it's funny. I was saying to my wife, Sam, the other day that because the temperatures have dropped a little and it's gotten chillier. And I came downstairs and I was in a vest and a cardigan, and she's like, it's not that cold. And I'm like a sickly Victorian child in the winter. Like, I get so cold. I'm always cold. And
the cardigan for me is one of my favorites.
It's like a hug.
It's like a hug.
It's like the fleece. It's like a hug.
It is. Yeah. It's really, every time I put one on and start buttoning up, I think, I should have 1,000 of these things.
I'm carrying my cardigan today. We're in that fun time of year where it's like a 40-degree spread between the high and the low. So I needed a cardigan walking in this morning. I didn't need one as I'm walking home. So yeah, it's cozy. It's comfy. It just makes you feel snug.
I know we're supposed to move on, but I do want to ask one more question just about it, because I like the idea of glasses. I want to, do you use them much as props? Like, do you take them off? Do you shake them at students?
All the time.
Any of this? I had to say, one of my favorite stories of Ian's is that he has multiple great stories about his prop using abilities on his class. Ian, do you want to elaborate on that? Oh.
Yeah. Well, I expressed to you once a moment of frustration in the classroom where it was a first-year class. This was a number of years ago. Not going to identify any aspects of it, but I got very frustrated because it was around midterm. Nobody had done any of the reading. Things were it was a waste of time to sort of be in there, and I might have dramatically taken off my glasses and thrown them upon the desk.
The fact that you used the word upon is already giving me the full sense of this moment.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah. It's the wrist flick.
Yes.
It's so good. And I don't wear glasses, and I really want a prop like that, because I don't have that ability to really lay down the frustration.
It's a very disappointing move where you're just like...
I mean, it's the same reason. I know we've talked about this before. in no way, again, we should make it clear, like I'm not condoning smoking, and definitely not in the classroom, but I feel like giving a lecture with a cigarette must have been a ton of fun. Like, just to have it's waving around, there's smoke everywhere, you can make it turn red, you can take a draw for dramatic, I feel like we should try to figure out what can replace that.
I'm gonna be really honest with you. I didn't think when you started out, I don't want to condone smoking. I didn't think that the cigarette is where you were going to land. Oh, yeah. I really thought we were going for a pipe.
Yeah.
I really thought the pipe was the image you were going to conjure. But I see what you did there with the cigarette. It's
because it's red.
It allows for more gesticulation.
Exactly. Because you can see the smoke moving all around as you're waving your hands.
But one of the things that the pipe does, though, is it gives you time to fill it and to kind of tap it and to light it. It gives you time to pause and
ritual
think.
There.
Yeah, and especially if you forgot what you're teaching that day. The pipe buys you at least 5 minutes.
Yeah. I also do like
if you mix up the days, right?
I do like the idea of being able to have the pipe so I can bang the stem of it against the the chalkboard as I'm making a point.
Right.
I do like that. You can't do that with cigarette.
No, you can't do that.
Yeah. You can still do that. You just can't have it lit in the classroom.
Oh no, I've considered that. Yeah, that's I think
that might be phase 2.
I was going to say that's the next
or phase 3, whichever phase we're on.
Yeah, the phase. It's definitely the last one.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take one more break, and then where we're going.
We're going to Cocktail Corner with Kurt.
That's right. All right. We'll see you there soon.
Welcome back to the Ivory Attic. We're back with Kurt's Cocktail Corner with our guest, McKinley Melton. Kurt, what is the name of this cocktail that you've been producing in the background with such fussiness?
That's a really good question. And it's a really good question because I actually have to admit something, which is that McKinley sent me the name of a drink that I actually could not pronounce. And so, so I actually had.
I really want to hear you try.
Well, because I'm a professional, I went on YouTube and it's the name of it is Sweet Synecdoche. I got so close.
Synecdoche.
I got so close.
What an awesome name. McKinley, what's the inspiration?
Thank you. Oh, God, that was fun. Yes. So, as I mentioned, I'm currently teaching a poetry class. And I was asked to come up with this name right after doing a poetry class. And of the various literary techniques, I'm a big fan of synecdoche. Because synecdoche is, I'm sure you Googled it.
I was going to say, I know what it is, McKinley, but why don't you tell the rest of the audience what that is?
Well, at its simplest, it's when a part is used to stand in for a whole. Sometimes a whole is meant to stand in for a part. So something like all hands on deck doesn't just mean we only want your hands. It really means we need everyone's labor to be invested here. And I am a big fan of synecdoche because I just like, the way that, like I think of like the Bill Withers song, Grandma's Hands, right? That it's not just about her hands. You're like remembering everything about her. And there's ways that it can be loving and familial. It can be, a little grown up if you're interested in maybe focusing on a collarbone or some other aspect of your beloved that, encapsulates the entirety of who they are in this moment without reducing to that, but also thinking about that. And so it's a thing that I enjoy. And so I thought about that for a cocktail name because I like the idea that one sip can be the embodiment of everything that's represented by the part, speaking to the reality of the whole.
No, it's a great idea, and actually, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to read the thing that you actually sent me because it really was inspiring. It said, so you said, I imagine a drink with a sweet and subtle introduction that finishes strong, as with any well executed synecdoche. Its whole should be identified and understood by a part, so each sip should represent an idea and sensibility that's larger than itself. Still, one's understanding of the drink, its composition, and perhaps one's understanding of life should deepen with each return.
I am so glad we're doing this podcast.
It's so good. So, So that's what I tried to do. I'm gonna just, without further ado, go ahead and take a sip and see if you think we got there.
I think nothing could live up to McKinley's description.
It's true. Just to give you an idea of what we have, just to describe
it is delicious.
Well, and just to describe what we're seeing. So it's a brown, as with a lot of my drinks. It's a kind of a brownish drink. I'm using some. There's an apple slice on the side. There's some cinnamon. There's a cinnamon stick on the side. Yeah, so I'll tell you kind of how I approached it. I basically, I wanted to, the kind of main thought for me was apple, kind of an apple fruitiness.
Mm-hmm.
Fall. But it represents fall, which was, I thought, kind of reminiscent of the type of thing. So it has, Laird's apple brandy as the base. It has a little bit of pear brandy in it. It also has some walnut bitters and a tiny bit of Antica sweet vermouth just to kind of round it out. And a little bit of maple syrup.
Oh,
yeah, just to sweeten it up a little bit.
Yeah,
so
very nice.
It's very nice. It is very fall.
Yeah.
And before I even took a sip, as soon as I saw the apple slice and the cinnamon stick, I was like, this is already, I'm sold.
Yeah, it does all right. It does all right.
And it does indeed start sweet and finishes strong.
But that was the important thing for me. I really wanted it because I actually thought a lot about that aspect of it.
And one of the things that I really appreciate about Kurt's mixology is the fact that although he often comes across as a very strong flavor in person, He creates drinks with real subtlety.
It's the only thing that I crave with subtlety. Yeah, exactly. Well, excellent. Well, I think we've done it.
We've done it
once again.
McKinley, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you all for having me.
Yeah, thank you. This was really
honored
wonderful.
by the invitation.
No, it was an easy one. We were just glad we could get you. So I know you have some heavy bookings. So,
I'm a busy man. No.
Well, as usual, you can follow us on our social media accounts on Instagram, on Facebook, and on what used to be Twitter and now is X.
Boy, is there going to be a time when we can stop saying that? I would
love to stop saying it too. But
all right, we have a slightly different handle on X. That's
Ivory Attic Hosts,
right? And everywhere else we're at the Ivory Attic.
And you can reach us by email too.
We would love an email. I think that if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, you know what, I got an email in front of me, why don't I email someone? That's how that works.
That's how it works, yeah.
Send us one. Tell us what you think. Give us thoughts.
That's mail@theivoryattic.com.
It's mail@theivoryattic.com. Anything else?
No, nothing else from me.
Wonderful. Great.
Well, as usual, thank you for joining us as we rummage through the Ivory Attic. I'm Ian Escherwood.
And I'm Kurt Andreessen.